What's up, everyone? It's your boy, The Business, coming back at you live for episode 20 of The Business. Let's be real. Tonight's special guest, it's funny for me to say this because it's probably going to put a number on our ages, but I've known Jason for almost a little bit, probably over 30 years. Him and his brother, I grew up with. His brother Lee, I was playing ball with back in the Amvets days, back when we were, 11 and 12 years old. And it was funny because Jason was running around us, and he's always been a super cool kid. And we were able to reconnect, and we started chatting about, what he does professionally, and and how excited he is to do so. He loves the sport of wrestling, and is more than happy to come on, and he's going to talk about what it's like being a Big 12 official now. He's worked his way up throughout the system and kind of made his way now to being one of the Big 12 officials. And he's officiated hundreds of matches throughout his career. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it was like for him growing up in Lorain and just, the path he took leading up to where he is now. So, with that being said, The Business, Let's Be Real, episode 20 begins now. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Business, Let's Be Real with Jason Rivera. Jason, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you on tonight, man. We were talking. We've been talking for weeks leading up to this, and just kind of getting ready for what it was that we were gonna try to bring to this show and promote on this show. And like I said, you have worked your way up through the ranks and kind of made your way as a Big 12 official now. And we're gonna go through, I guess, some of the lives and times of Jason, starting with what it was like for you kind of growing up in Lorain and the city of Lorain and where we come from, and just kind of, if you don't mind, kind of chatting about that first and letting people know where you're from.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah. So like you said, we go way back, man. You texted me that picture the other day, and I was laughing. I think I was 8, 9. So that picture was probably in 89 or 1990. Like you said, we've been going back a while, man. There were some old names and old faces in that picture too. But no, like you said, I grew up, pretty much in 2 different places, man. Old apartments, and then on 34th Street in Lorain, Ohio, between Pearl, right off of Pearl there. And went to Garfield for a little bit. Then I went to Whittier, and then I graduated from Southview in '97. And right after that, I went to the service, and it was good. Growing up in Lorain, I get back there as much as I possibly can with kids, not as much as I'd like to, but it's a unique spot. I think you know that, because when you move away, you realize that it's one of the few places that it is the way it is. It's definitely unique compared to, I don't know if it's just home or if it's, but like it's unique growing up in Lorain. I think it prepares you better than most any other place that I've been.
That's true. It's true. I mean, and that's the thing. I don't think that people understand sometimes. And when we talk about the city of Lorain, and we, don't tap sometimes into all the different cultures and everything that's in that city. I brought it up before on how it's such a melting pot for so many different, nationalities and all these different cultures. And I mean, we grew up in it back at a time when, neighbors were neighbors. Like, you knew the people that lived next to you. You knew the people that lived down the street, and everybody knew you. Like, and it was definitely a different time. And, I appreciated that time. So, I mean, I'm sure you did as well.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good. We, like you said, and, growing up back then, like I see I got 3 kids, one's 14, one's 12, and one's 10. So like, I see how they're growing up, and it's just different, and I was like, our social media was walking outside, just seeing who else is out, going for a walk and seeing if somebody was, on 30th Street hanging out. That's what we did, to hang out. And it's different. And not that it's, you'll see, I think, as your kids get a little bit, well, you got an older kid, but like they don't do that anymore, and it's a shame because it was fun. We got into a little bit more trouble than they do now because now they just stay at home, but it was fun to do it back then.
Yeah, it was. It is a different time that they're in now. I think technology's separated a lot of people, and that's just the way of the world of today. It's like so much easier to reach out and text someone, and if that's how you're going to communicate. I mean, like you said, we used to set it up the day in advance or a couple of days in advance, like, hey, we're going to be at the park Saturday. Come meet us up here about noon or so. You know what I'm saying? And then you and your buddies
there was
or
no
whoever made
texting
it up
if you
there.
were late, or there was you just had to make sure you were there at noon.
Yeah.
So
no, it was a super cool time.
But it was good. I enjoy. I really think about those days good. I do. I look back and I always. It was unique, a very unique place to live compared to the places I've ever been. So.
Yeah, no, a lot of respect for the city of Lorain. I know as you were growing up in Lorain, you talked about some of the schools you went to, like Garfield and Whittier and Southview. I know when you were going through Whittier and Southview, back then, and I've talked about it too before, Whittier and Southview are some of the best wrestling schools in the state of Ohio. Whittier's pretty much unmatched as far as middle schools go, and Southview's right up there, always knocking on the door, and has been since when we were kids. I mean, it's not even Southview anymore; it's just called Lorain,
right.
Now. And but can you talk somewhat about what it was like for you growing up wrestling in the city of Lorain? Because I think that's kind of what when we start to push it further into your story, the wrestling that started in Lorain will come back to what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I started wrestling competitively, I guess you could say, in the 7th grade on the Whittier junior high team, right? And it was fun, man, because back then, I think that was 90, see, I graduated in 97, so that was probably 92 or 93. And every time you grabbed the morning journal, every time it was on the newspaper, you grabbed the newspaper, there was an article about the high school wrestling team, right? Like you turned to the sports page, and because my brother, he played baseball and he was a pretty halfway decent athlete, and he was a big sports fan too. So we always had the sports page of the morning journal, and there was always an article of Jimmy James or Juggy Franklin, all those guys. And you're like, oh man, and so kind of for me, I just kind of joined the wrestling team. I don't know, like my family life was all right. My mom and dad did what they had to do. But I just kind of looked at those guys as role models when I was younger, like, man, I wanted to get my name in the paper. I was never really good enough to get my name in the paper and do all that stuff. But, it was a blast. I like that unity. It was fun just hanging out with the team. My son, he just started wrestling. He runs cross country and track. And like, I get excited for him to go on the bus rides because I remember how much fun we would have on the bus ride, right? Like, oh, we got to go to this high school. We're going to Avon Lake. And, if we knew it was a half-hour bus drive, it was exciting. It was fun. It was something to do. It was, I knew I was going to be on the bus with 10, 15, 20 of my buddies, and we clown, joke, crack on each other. It was enjoyable. So that's why I stuck with it. I wasn't as good as some of the guys that came through Whittier or came through Southview, but I wrestled all the way through my senior year and just had a ton of fun doing it, going on the tournaments, staying in hotel rooms. Because growing up in Lorain, we didn't go on vacations. We didn't stay in hotel rooms. We didn't do stuff like that, right? Like my kids, they think it's normal to go on vacation every year. For us, if we went to Cedar Point, we were lucky. So, it was also a way to see a different part of, I think Turnus did a real good job at that. Like he would make sure when we would travel, we'd go to Columbus, we'd go to these other cities in Lorain, and he would make sure we'd stay in nice hotels. I remember that. I remember that him specifically saying, you could do this. You could get out and travel, and you could do that and do this and do that. And I always kind of remember him and like Pepe, like they would always, they made it seem like it was possible to actually have where you could just travel and do things and see different things. So for me, it wasn't so much the wrestling as it was as just being part of that team. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I got beat up a lot, but I wouldn't take it back for the world.
Yeah. I tell you what, I talk about it quite often about the fact that, you know, sports, you know, sometimes gets lost up into what it really is. People start to take it too serious. People start to, you know, try to
Yep.
make a business out of it for kids at such a young age. Instead of letting them have fun, you know, the camaraderie in the dugouts, the camaraderie on the bus rides, like you were talking about. I mean, that's what you remember. You know, it's not
Yep.
about always, you know, wrestling in this match and wrestling against that guy. I mean, sometimes you remember, of course, classic matchups that you have, but those bus rides and the times in the locker room and the times in the dugouts and, you know, I mean, the times on the bench when you guys are just sitting around chopping it up. Those are the times that you remember, man. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's cool that you're talking about that, you know, that you're bringing up the fact that, you know, those are some of the biggest parts of what it was like. And, you know, that camaraderie with, you know, making those trips and going to those places and kind of doing those things, you know.
Yeah,
And
it was great. Yeah, I still
yeah.
talk about those times. I don't know if you remember Orlando Pagan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I remember him and Wilson Gonzalez at the state tournament my senior year. I think I can't remember me, him, Jesse Faria, like a bunch of us. You know, we stayed in the hotel room. Danny Findley. I think Danny's the head coach now at Lorraine High.
I think he is. Yeah.
Yeah, but dude, like that was the funnest time. You know, like it was like we're staying in that hotel room, driving down to Columbus, and it was great, man. It was you know, and that's one of the reasons I think you know, like you had talked about before I joined the service, and it just for that camaraderie. That's what I really wanted. That's what I liked. I like hanging out with fellas, you know. So I tried to keep that through and through.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You know, after going through school, you know, kind of like you said, you wrestled and did your thing there. You know, leading up to your senior year, you've always been a nice guy, a real soft spoken dude. You know, your family's all the same way. Your brother Lee is just like that too,
Yep.
like super chill, really nice guy. You know, and you were able to win Homecoming King your senior year, and we were joking about that because you had sent it to me in the resume write up that I was reading over, and you're like Homecoming King, haha, and you were like, you know, but I mean, it's still like that lets people know that, you know what I mean, you were very liked amongst your peers, and that's a cool thing. And then I know like almost immediately after your senior year, you talked about how you joined the Marines, and can you talk about, I guess, how what your mindset was in going to the service? Like, was it something that you had chosen like years before that you knew you were going to do, or was it something that just kind of came up senior year that you thought, hey, maybe I can do this, and you know, see what happens?
Yeah. No, it was something I always wanted to do at a young age, right? And like I remember as a kid, you know, like I wanted to travel really a lot and just get, not that I wanted to get out of Lorraine, I just knew there was more out there, right? So going in between my junior and senior year, I actually signed up and back to the wrestling tie, right? So one of the funny things about it was, remember Alshie Williams?
Yeah, I remember Alshie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So
Alshie was a
Alshie,
Marine.
right?
Yeah, I know. He was.
Yeah, he went to the Marine Corps too. So he came back and he was like on recruiter's assistance, and he said, you know, say, you ever thought about joining the service? I said, yeah, definitely. That's what I'm going to do. So going into my senior year, like I had already signed up. Like I knew I had a date that I was leaving for boot camp, and that's why, like, I left so quick. You know, we graduated. I think we graduated the 20th of June or the 23rd or something like that, and I left June 30th. Like I left a week or two right after. Like I wanted to go. You know, it was something I wanted to do, and I didn't see any time. To be honest, I don't want to get in trouble that summer my senior year, right? I don't want to enjoy having too much fun where I change my mind. So, um, yeah, I left. I was gone, man. I jumped on that plane June 30th, right after I graduated, and then I spent, you know, a good 10 years, 10 years technically in the Marine Corps after that. So.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about. Hold on one second, because we got comments popping in. Jose Torres wanted to pop in and say, "What's up, fellas?"
What's up,
Jose, how
Jose?
you doing, man? Good to see you, bud.
Hey, so real quick, since he popped up, so Jose, remember, I had to see if he remembers this. So I had just got back from Saudi Arabia, and I think it was 2001. Yeah, and I had to go to the pistol range, and I show up at the pistol range in Quantico, Virginia, and Jose was the instructor. He was running the range, and I actually went to his barracks room after that. And it's funny because Lorraine, right, small town, whatever. And there I am in Quantico, Virginia, and I can't remember if I was going to Saudi. I think I was either going to Saudi or coming from Saudi. But Jose, he was a sergeant. He was in charge of the range, and I remember too because I was only there in Quantico for like a week or two, and I didn't have any magazines. As weird as that sounds, and he kind of bailed me out, and I was like, thank God I knew that dude, right? Like he got me what I needed because everybody else was kind of. I don't know if I can cuss or not, but they were kind of bitching, and I was like, well, I'm just passing through. I'm just trying to get qualified on this pistol, and he bailed me out. He let me use some of his magazines, so he saved the day. So cheers to you, Jose.
Jose, good looking out, bro. Good looking out. He's like, yes, sir. I remember that. He remembers that. Damian
Yeah.
Ferris Montgomery's popping in. He's like, hey, brother. He's like, good to see you both, man. Damian Ferris, good to see you, bud. Hope you're taking care.
He's
I'll be
fit.
talking
I
about
see
you.
him too. He's fit. Yeah.
Yeah. He's in great shape. He's in great shape, man. He's still keeping it up and, working hard. And yeah, I'll be talking about his event he's got coming up early in May at the end of the show. But yeah, I guess we're kind of now at that point where you talked about going to the Marines. You said that you were in there for, about almost 10 years. I mean, you said you went from June of 07 to, June of 97 to 2007. And then can you kind of talk about some of the places you went to, like some of the places you were stationed at, like, because I know you had it broken down for me, but if you could tell, the audience out there kind of where were some of the places you got to go and travel to, because you talked about, wanting to travel and, and what it is that you were able to do in some of those travels, as far as what your position was and what you were doing out there.
Yeah. So my first duty station was in Cherry Point, North Carolina, 2nd Lab Battalion. There, I was with a unit, and my initial job was administration, right? So, I wanted to try. When I joined the service, I didn't really know much about jobs or what they did or anything. I just wanted to go. So, I joined for basic administration, which I think turned out to be a pretty good choice. So, I was stationed at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and then I tried to join what they call MSG duty, Marine Security Guard duty. And I got selected for that. And then once I got selected for that, they have what they call a career planner. He called me in and said, hey, they got this new thing called a TAFT, a Technical Assistance Field Team, right? And I ended up being kind of like an aide/security guard for a general. So it worked out really good. Instead of going to MSG duty, I did that. And that's when I ran into Jose. I got, qualified on the pistol. I went to the FBI class. I did all that anti-terrorism and basic driving course. And then I got stationed in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia from 99 to 01. So to January of 01, right? So sent me from June-ish 99 to January of 01. And in between there, I went to the pistol range and got qualified and ran into Jose there. And that was a good time, man. I loved it out there. It was prior to September 11th, so I was able to be lucky enough. I would go on vacation to Jordan and Israel and Egypt and Qatar and all those places because it was cheap and easy. And back before September 11th, you could travel like that. It wasn't as restrictive as it is now. And we did a couple, deployments from there, and then that ended up being a 3-year duty. So you did 18 months in one spot, and then you did 18 months in the other. And then my other one after that, I was stationed in Stavanger, Norway. And that was great too. So like that, I worked for, it was a NATO command there. And again, another 1-star general where I was technically his security, but I was also his aide. That's where they wanted someone with an administrative background to go in. So I got there in February of 01, and we went to Kosovo for 8-9 months, and I came back September 8th, 2001, right? So 3 days before 9/11, and then 9/11 happened, and then we deployed. We were one of the first units in Afghanistan, but I was really lucky in the fact that I was kind of more at the high level. So I was a security guard for a 1-star. So at the time I was a sergeant, and we were planning routes and doing all that stuff. And so I wasn't I wasn't one of those guys that was boots on the ground kicking in doors type of deal. But it was unique because I think I got to see it from a different aspect. As a sergeant, most of the time you're leading men into battle there, and I was lucky enough to just had to be responsible for one vehicle with the 1-star, and I had a convoy, and they do everything they can to keep those guys really, really safe. So but it was good. I spent 2 years in Norway, then I went to San Diego for a little bit for recruiter school, because then I got selected to be a recruiter. And then my last 3 years in the Marine Corps I spent in Pittsburgh, right? So as a recruiter, and that was a blast too. That was a hard time to recruit from 03 to 06, 07, because that's when, a lot of things were going on, real world situations, and a lot of parents didn't want their kids to join the service. But I enjoyed it. It to me, it wasn't that hard. You're just honest. And I was lucky enough that I was still young at the time. I was 23, 24, and, I had a lot, luckily for me, a lot going for me. I was still in halfway decent shape, and, recruiting kids to me wasn't that hard.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And like I said before, I mean, you're such an easy person to get along with, so I'm sure that you were able to sit down and talk to these kids and tell them the real about, the life and what it is and how much fun you can have. I mean, like you said, before the September 11th scare, I mean, that kind of, it ruined a lot of the traveling and made it tough for people. And
yeah.
Before that, like you said, you were traveling the world, man. You were having fun and enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah. The same thing. When I was in Norway, we'd go to Ireland, we'd go to Greece, we'd go everywhere. Just cause. That's what I joined the service for. A lot of people join the service for a whole nother reason. I probably would have ended up joining the Army if it wasn't for Alshi. Because he was the one that said, hey, you should join the Marine Corps, and I probably would have. If Alshi or somebody else would have joined the Army and said, hey, you should join the Army, I probably would have been like, all right, cool, But yeah, it was fun. I had a tough choice to make. I had been in for, almost 10 years, and I didn't know the girl I was with at the time. She was also in the Marine Corps, and she got out, and she was a City of Phoenix police officer. So I was like, oh man, I was like, what should I do? And I'm glad I spent 10 years in, but I'm also glad I got out, because now I'm home every day, and I get to see the kids, and I don't miss that stuff. I don't have to worry about deployment, so it was a win-win.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Wait, and now you talked about getting out, and I know that you said you work for a company called Gavin Industries, and you had started your time in Phoenix, and then you made a move back to Pittsburgh. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I had knew the Pittsburgh area, right, and all that stuff, and my wife at the time, she was a City of Phoenix police officer, and then when we decided to have kids, she wanted to be closer to family because she's from Pittsburgh, right?
Okay.
So we ended up coming back here, and I got a job at Gavin as soon as it kind of landed. They were a smaller company at the time, but at the time my top secret clearance was still active, and they did a lot of work with the government. So they do. What we do is we specialize in what they call hemp shielding, high electromagnetic pulse shielding, and we do a lot of work at the radar sites for the NASA, Missile Defense Agency, the Air Force Space Command, and smaller. And I didn't really have much experience or anything, but I had a top secret clearance, and it was a job in the area. So that's how I ended up in Pittsburgh for the long term. I live 10 minutes from downtown, and we go to Pittsburgh almost every weekend and hang out, and it's close, it's close to home, close to Lorraine. So for the holidays, I get back, and my mom can come down and hang out and stuff like that.
Nice. No, that's awesome. And that's what was cool is that, like you said, you made your way back home closer. You did, like you said earlier, did a 3-year stint being a recruiter in Pittsburgh. So you had already had a familiarity with the city. You weren't coming to somewhere where you really didn't know what was going on. And, like you said, the young lady you were with was from Pittsburgh. So it was like, so to go back home for her was probably great.
Yeah.
And obviously you've been doing your thing there ever since. So, if we could talk about, I guess, the beginning of the officiating, like kind of what first drew you to thinking about doing this. Yeah, like if you want to start there, because then I'll talk about more about the series of events on how you went through.
Yep. So honestly, why I started officiating, man, just out of pure boredom, right? So I didn't know. I knew some people here, but not being from here, I didn't know what to do. Like at the time, I was living right by a high school, and I would read the paper and I would see, they're having a wrestling match, right? So I'd go to a wrestling match just to kill time. Like on a Wednesday night here in Western Pennsylvania, it's a lot of good wrestling out here in Western PA, right? So I was like, yeah, I'll go check these guys out, because all my time in the Marine Corps, everyone talks about where they're from and, this and that. And there was guys and there was, base teams and all that stuff. And I tried to wrestle on the base team just for fun and all that. But I wasn't really into wrestling. I always enjoyed the sport, but for 10 years, I kind of and it wasn't real popular. Like it wasn't like it is now, where you could just I've got an app on my TV and I can watch wrestling anytime, right? So I would go to high school wrestling matches and just watch them, for about a year. And then I was like, I'm going to just become an official. I think it's a good way to just, why not? So I took my test here in West Pennsylvania. They call it the PIAA, and went back then. They would do it on paper. You would literally just walk in and you would take a test on paper. And I took my test and I joined the Pittsburgh chapter. And for that first year, I didn't do any assignment because I didn't know anybody. Everything was kind of already signed. So I just went to the meetings and met those guys there. And they were a bunch of cool dudes, like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's kind of fun. And that's how I got started. In the first 2-3 years of officiating, man, I would just officiate little kids on the weekends, like 7 years old, 4 years old, first year wrestlers. But I never said no to anything. I had fun doing it, and part of it was because of the crew that I was with. Like, some of those guys, they're funny, they're clowns, and it kind of reminded me of the same reason why I wrestled. Like it was just, getting there and having a beer afterwards, or going to go get some wings afterwards, or just hanging out afterwards, or just hanging out during a tournament type of deal. And luckily for me, it turned out that I was halfway decent at it. I think being in the Marine Corps and traveling, I didn't get rattled too much. Like you said, I'm a pretty calm guy in the first place, so you could yell at me as much as you want, and I'm kind of just whatever, right? Like, okay. So, and I worked hard at it. I had a pretty good work ethic at it too. And then slowly from there, they start assigning you junior high matches, and you do junior high matches, and then you do a couple varsity matches, and, combination of a lot of things. Like a lot of people don't want to do it anymore. So the slim pickings were slim, and I was halfway good at it. And so I kind of moved up pretty quick, called a couple Pennsylvania state championships, team and individual. And so that was it for kind of like the start of my career, that was in 2007, 2008, 2008-ish. Yeah. I started.
Okay. No, that's cool. And that's what I was going to kind of touch on, because I know you had, like you said, you started officiating with kids and then worked your way up to junior high, and then was doing high school. And, I was reading about how you had done, I want to say you had officiated in 5 Pennsylvania state championships. And you touched a little bit about it when you first started talking about, Pennsylvania wrestling. And Pennsylvania wrestling is some of the top wrestling in the country, Ohio, Iowa, Indiana. Sometimes people don't know, but that area is really the mecca of American wrestling, as far as, young kids coming up. The colleges out there, like Iowa was the top, team in the country for many years now. And now Penn State's the top team in the country, you know what I'm saying? And there's, some of the teams like where you're at now, in the Big 12. I mean, those teams compete now, but a lot of those teams, the Oklahoma States and those guys, they have guys from the Ohio Valley. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of their teams are made up of these kids from this particular area, which is, like I said, it's Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa. Like those guys all are bangers up there. They love the game. So I mean, I guess being able to get to that level of just officiating those state championships, you had to see some great quality wrestlers that we're still seeing, today, I would suppose, right?
Yeah. Even here, just locally, Western PA, like, the NCAA tournament was just last month now, and they had 5 kids here from Western PA in the national finals. So, there's some studs, man, and you see them when they're younger too. Like you could tell when you do some of these, like my son, he just started wrestling. He's 14. He never, and this is because you kind of alluded to it too at the beginning of the show. When I started officiating about the same time that my son was born, and I thought, man, I want my son to wrestle. It's such a good sport. I had so much fun doing it. And then I started officiating these little kids, and I'm like, shit, I don't want my son to be near this, right? Because these parents are wild, man. Like, I was like, and it's insane. Like, I've done everything but a Division I national championship, right? And the most insane things I've ever seen have been on a youth mat, right? To the point where I won't even entertain stepping on a youth mat anymore because the parents are just so wild. So I didn't and part of it was because I'd see, when you got an 8-year-old kid screaming and yelling, he doesn't want to wrestle, and his dad is throwing him out there. I guess it's a little different, like if the kid's playing softball or baseball or basketball, but that 8-year-old kid's going to go out there, he's going to get headlocked, and he's going to get armbarred, and I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if that's good parenting, right? It's not my style of parenting, right? Like, if you want to make them sit on the bench, that's one thing, like, hey, you committed to this basketball team and you're going to sit here for the whole season, but if you're going to if the kid doesn't want to do it and it can cause him physical pain, right? It kind of makes me, and you see that a lot, and there's been even times where I've had to step in between parents and their own children, like, hey, you need to relax there, stud, like he's like, well, don't tell me how to raise my kids. And I'm like, I'm not telling you how to raise your kid. I'm telling you what you can't do as a coach to an athlete here, right? Like, so my son never wrestled, and even now he's 14, he's in the 8th grade, and we were at practice tonight, and I'm talking to other 14-year-olds here in Western PA that they've been wrestling for 8 years. And I'm like, Jesus, man, like these kids are good out here. And even at that Division I level, man, I'm always impressed every year how good these athletes are, right? Yeah. And it kind of looks easy when you're watching it on TV, but when you're standing 6 feet away from them dudes, it could be intimidating. I'm not a big guy, I'm still in fairly decent shape. I work out, but you get 2 heavyweights out there, man. They start throwing each other around. It's like, Jesus Christ, No,
that's fun though. Yeah, it's crazy because I don't know if you know too much about the background about my wrestling. Like, I have been all the way through, for many years since I was a little kid. But I loved the sport as a little kid. Like, my parents didn't have to throw me out there. I was running out there, ready to go. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different than some of the stories you're talking about with these youth wrestlers. But yeah, like, I kind of have shielded my 10-year-old to it. Like, he's been asking me for years, Dad, show me how to wrestle. And I'm like, buddy, let's take it easy. I'll show you little stuff, but I don't want to, put that burden on you of trying to go out there and be a wrestler, because it's tough. It's tough out there. I can only imagine. I see the intensity, in baseball and basketball, and how some of these parents can act, and you can only imagine what it's like in a combat sport like wrestling, man. I mean, like, people talk about, boxing, and you don't play boxing. You don't play wrestling either. You don't play
Right.
wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? When somebody says,
And
what sport did you play? You don't say I played wrestling. You say I wrestled.
I
Or
wrestled. Yep.
everything else. I played football. I played basketball. I played baseball. When you wrestle, you wrestled. You know what I'm saying? Like there
Yep.
was no playing wrestling. So if a kid's
Yep.
not comfortable getting out there, definitely don't make them do it because you're kind of traumatizing that poor kid after that.
Yeah, I know. And
That they're being forced to go and
it's
get some bodily harm done to them.
and it's one of those things too. A lot of parents don't know. They've never seen their 8-year-old get headlocked, right? Like they've never seen their 6-year-old get tossed on the mat, and it gets intense, man. It it's. I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of like as an official that someone has to try and keep the peace. It can be wild at times, So, but it's fun. I enjoy it. It's exciting.
No, that's cool though. It's cool. I mean, like I said, not everybody's like that. Not everybody's, scared of it and doesn't want to do it. But I get it. Some kids don't want to get out there and get headlocked and stuff. I'm gonna pop in. Kevin Borges popped in. He wanted to say, "What's up, bro?"
Oh, what's up, man?
I'm like, didn't Kevin's younger brother go to school with you? I think he was your age. I know Kevin was mine.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's totally different. Like you said, you officiated in some of those Penn State wrestling championships. Now, if we could touch a little bit on you going to take the NCAA test and kind of what motivated you, or did somebody reach out to you maybe as a mentor to say, hey, you should be officiating at the college level?
So a little bit of both. So here, like in Pennsylvania, you have to join a chapter, right? And then so to be a high school official, you have to attend 6 meetings throughout the year. So they schedule the meetings, and you have to go to these meetings, and they go over the rules, and they're always fun. The meetings because it's a group of fellows that are just talking about wrestling and officiating. And within that group, there was guys that had called. 10, 12 Division I national championships. And they reached out to me, or over a handful of beers, said, hey, you should take your test, right? For the NCAA. And I said, yeah, all right. So you do that online. And I took that online, and those guys helped me out big time, right? Again, it was a combination of, I kind of took advantage and worked really hard of a good situation. Like I had a couple of guys help me out, some, I guess, heavy hitters in the Division I national championship game that kind of pulled me along rather quickly. But I was good at it, like I had the demeanor and I was willing to travel. And that's part of it too. Like I was lucky enough to where the job I could leave and fly down to North Carolina, or I can go to, Ohio, I drive down to Ohio University, or go, somewhere to officiate a match and have it not be a big deal. So they kind of helped me out, and then for a couple years, I would just do a lot of Division II and Division III matches here in Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, Ashland, Washington, and Jefferson here. Like there's a lot of Division II and III schools here in a 200-mile radius of my house. And then my first Division I championship was it's not even a conference anymore. They got absorbed, but was the EWL. And they were schools like Lock Haven, Cleveland State, Clarion, pretty solid Division I schools, scrappy Division I schools. So that was it. So like my first Division I match was it uniquely was in Cleveland. It was Cleveland State versus Clarion, right? So went out there and called a match. And then I got tied into the ACC, and the guys there would give me a decent amount of work. So I've not as a head official because I wasn't an ACC official, but that's where I got a little bit more exposure. So that was doing tournaments down at NC State, Virginia Tech, and in Division I wrestling, most conferences have 2 officials. They have your head official and then the mat judge, the guy who walks the outside. So I was the mat judge for a lot of matches down at NC State, Duke, Pitt, a lot of ACC matches, and then the EWL got absorbed by the MAC, which has Kent State, Missouri for wrestling, Ohio University, Rider, like a bunch of those schools, Buffalo, Central Michigan, like it's a pretty big conference, the MAC. So I did that for a couple years, called a couple conference turns. So when Division I wrestling, you want to get a conference, you want to be attached to a conference, right? So that's how it works. So there's 7 conferences, and at the end of the year, you get, if you're lucky enough or good enough, you get assigned to a conference tournament for the next year. And then you get assigned matches for that conference throughout the year, right? So the ACC officials or the Big 12 officials do the Big 12 matches. So if Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State is a Big 12 match, and that needs to be a Big 12 official, right? But if it's, say, Ohio State versus Duke, that's a Big 10 versus ACC, that can be any official, right? It doesn't need to be a Big 10 or a Big 12 official. Now, a lot of times they keep Big 10 guys on it just to get them work, or Big 12 guys on it in their own conference. So I would fill in for a lot of these bigger conferences as I was in I wouldn't say a lower conference because those schools are just as good, but as I was in a different conference. And then last year, I was lucky enough to call the 12 championship. And, like you said, that's some powerhouse schools. You got West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. And it was kind of nerve-wracking because my first match last year was an odd year because of COVID. So they cut the season in half, right? And usually in November, that's where you get a lot of your, what they call open tournaments. You can go and you can officiate tournaments at, every November, I'd go down to Virginia Tech and do that the first week of the year and call 60 bouts, right, of open tournaments. Then the next weekend, I'd turn around and I'd do NC State. And that was a huge tournament. What that's open, and you'd call 60, 70 matches, right? So you get your feet wet. And then I'd go to Vegas, and Vegas, this is a big tournament. They have what they call the Cliff Keen, and I call that, and you call more matches. So by the time you call like real dual meets in December, January, February, you've already got 100, 150 matches underneath your belt. But this year was different. So my first Big 12 match was Oklahoma State versus Oregon, right? At Oklahoma State. And I hadn't officiated in almost a year. So I was like, oh, geez. But it went good. I think I was lucky enough to where the teams haven't wrestled in so long that everybody was in such a good mood just to be back on the mat that so it was fun. And now, so from here, the next 2 years I'll be in the Big 12. I did good enough to where now I was in the Big 12. Then they offered me a 2-year contract, so I'll be there for the next 2 years. And hopefully I don't have to leave. That's a good conference to be in. There's a lot of good schools. I mean, travels a little bit, because the closest school to me is West Virginia. But other than that, I'm flying to Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. Air Force is in the Big 12 for wrestling, so they'll fly everywhere and you call a match.
That's awesome. No, congratulations on the 2-year contract with the Big 12. That's huge. Yeah, no, I think that's super cool. You talk about the whole story on how you were able to bounce around and fill in, and you took initiative to do that, and that's huge, because when some of those conferences, they see that, they're like, hey, this guy's here, he's there, he's trying to make things happen, and he's looking for the work. Let's bring him on. And yeah, this past year's been crazy, with the COVID situation that killed everything last year, and they canceled the national championship, man. Like and it was a week out, like the kids, because so last year I called the MAC championship, and that was at Northern Illinois, right outside of Chicago. And I had never even heard of COVID, right? Like and one of the guys I officiated with, he's from Pittsburgh too. We were flying back, and he's a doctor, and he's like, man, this COVID thing is going to shut everything down. I was like, what the hell is COVID? Right? And then he started and then a couple of days later, my kids' schools canceled, and and it kind of sucked too, because that weekend was a Division II and Division III national championship, and those kids were already there. They were on the mat, and they were going to start the tournament the next day, and they canceled it on a Thursday night, and these kids were ready to weigh in Friday morning. So it sucked, but that's crazy.
What can you do? Yeah.
because all those sports went through it. I mean, we saw the professionals, the college, the high school. I mean,
Yeah.
all the way down to the elementary kids who all got everything got shut down. We were quarantined there for a while, and it's nice to see things are coming back. It's coming back slow, but it is coming back. Super nice to see. Yeah, no, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough because I mean, and then you coming back to your first match is Oklahoma State, Oregon. You said, and
Yep.
I'm sure you were
Yeah.
anxious, like the same way that everybody else was too.
It was, and to make it to speaking of COVID, to make it worse was, so when I went into the testing protocol, this year I was in a testing protocol for the ACC and the Big 12, and between December 29th and the first weekend of March, the Big 12 tournament, I was tested 49 times, right? So on top of, because it can be officiating obviously can be nerve-wracking, and that's kind of why I like it. A handful of times a year, you step out there and there's 2, 3, 10,000 people out there, and it's you and two wrestlers, and it makes you focus, and it makes you do it. But to add on top of that to this year, you had to take a COVID test even to get on the flight through your conference. Then you would get there. You'd have to get there 4 hours early this year and take the on-site COVID test, right? So if you failed it, you couldn't officiate. So you'd be in, South Dakota or Oklahoma State, and if you failed that test, you couldn't officiate. So it was, it just added a little bit more stress to the situation because, nobody wants to fly somewhere and not, pass a test. And then there you are in the middle of nowhere trying to figure out how to get home. But I don't think that happened too many times this year because they were really good about the protocols that they did. And at first I'm like, man, I want to do this. But then you kind of got used to it, but it's good. It's good. I enjoy it, man. It's fun. It's like I said, it's not too many people could, it takes, and I've learned that there's levels to it too, right? So like, I thought I was a pretty decent high school official calling a lot of state championships, a lot of big tournaments. And if there was a huge match here in Western PA, somehow, some way I'd end up being on that mat. Those can get crazy too, where there's only 800 people there, but they all know each other, and it's a grandma and grandpa and cousin, and and they're right on top of you, and they can get wild, and it makes you focus. But it's fun. I'm really glad I just took that test out of boredom and where it led me to. I never had any aspirations of being one of the best officials out there, or being a big time official because my kids like it because they see me on ESPN every now and then. They think that's cool. I never had any aspirations of that. I just
cool, man.
I just wanted to meet people and just hang out and call some wrestling, and then one thing kind of led to another. So.
That's awesome, man. Super cool to have you on, man. And talk about that life and just talk about the life that you've lived and, all the things you've gone through, man. I mean, everybody has their own story, man. And I was lucky enough to bring yours to light tonight, man, because, you and I talked a couple of weeks ago about trying to put this all together, and, we've chatted back and forth since, and, it's just a cool thing to see. I've checked out the pictures and, watched the videos, and, you've been there and you've done that, and that's what's awesome about it, and I know your kids are proud, and, the people from Lorraine are proud of you. Your family's proud of you, man. Like, so I'm happy, like I said, to be able to bring some light to the officiating profession, man, because it's big, man. What I want to kind of do with you now is I'm going to put you solo screen, kind of let you chat about officiating as a whole, for those that may be interested in getting into it, kind of letting them know, if they could get a hold of you, if they got any questions, and where to go check out, if they are interested maybe into getting into the officiating profession.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm sure you see it or you read articles about it, but there's a huge shortage in officiating in every sport, right? Like, maybe it's just because I follow it, but like you go places and they're canceling matches or football games on Friday nights. And here in Western PA, they're trying to schedule them for Thursday nights because there's not enough football officials. And like I said, I just took my test just because out of boredom, and it led to this, right? With a little bit of effort. So if anyone's ever interested in becoming an official, it's a great way to stay involved with the sport, any sport, right? Even a couple sports. I know guys who do 2, 3 sports. Um, so every state is different if you're looking at high school. And one of the best ways you could do it is go to nfhs.com for the National Federation of High School Sports. And if you do some digging around and you just type in official on the search engine, or you can go become an official, it will take you to your state's sanctioning body, right? And every state has different rules. Sometimes you have to take a test. Sometimes you need to take a class. Sometimes you have to get background clearances. But, they're usually the process isn't too hard, and it's not really expensive. You might got to pay $40-$50 to sign up and get a background check, and, you buy a couple uniforms, and you're good to go. And it's good side money too. We didn't touch on that. Not that I did this for the money, but when you're making extra cash, it never hurts, right? Especially when you're doing something that you truly enjoy. So again, if you're looking at becoming an official in any sport, go to the National Federation of High School Sports. You can download the books, you could take the test, and just be mindful that the tests are pretty hard. They're about the rules. Most people don't know how many rules there are when it comes to a sport, right? Most people think of usually what's happening inside the circle or the lines or inside the football field, but there's so much more to it. So make sure you read the book and have the book with you when you take the test. And I'm pretty sure most states have it now where you can take the test online. But that's how you would become a high school official. And then I'm sure most of the time, if you take your high school test, there's usually a college official in that chapter that does Division II or Division III stuff locally. But if not, you could become I could only speak on becoming a wrestling official. And between you and I, half the people on here, probably have wrestled in the past. So you can go to Arbiter Sports. They open that test up in like October and usually have a month to take that test. You sign up, they send you the books. And then once you take the NCAA test, there's local chapters and you get updates on that on the website, right? So the NCAA is run mostly through a website, and then they tell you what chapters to join within your area. And then, they only have usually meetings once a year because it's more spread out, right? In high school, it's more local where you're driving right up the road for a meeting. But in college, you might be flying somewhere for a meeting or driving a halfway, 4 or 5 hours to go to that meeting. So they only have those once a year. And most of the time they're online too. There is a little bit of time commitment, but we need officials, man, in every sport at every level, and I tell people often, I've learned more about just being a parent and being a halfway decent human officiating than what people give. It teaches you a lot, because you're going to blow a call if you officiate. When you blow a call and it's on ESPN, or there's 3,000 people in the audience booing you, it teaches you more about yourself, especially if it's in the first match of the night and you got 10 more to go, and it's like, oh Jesus, this is gonna be a long day, but so that's how you do it, man. The National Federation of High School Sports, that you look up that website and they will tell you in your state the best way to become a high school official. And then from there, becoming a college official is, once you've done high school for a while, you'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Like I said, appreciate you coming on, dude. I appreciate you spending some knowledge. It was funny because back when you and I first started talking, I had kind of gotten approached about umpiring baseball, you know what I'm saying, too. And I was thinking, like, man, like, that's going to be something, because he didn't touch on the money at all. It's actually pretty decent money you guys make, especially now at that college level, because I had the one guy talk to me about, working college games and stuff and how much he makes just in 2 days on, officiating a couple college baseball games. Man,
it's a season to add up, like if you do a season, and again, for me, I don't do it for the money, but I enjoy it, and the money's just a plus, but you could make, depending on how much you officiate, you could, I don't know what football, basketball, and all those other guys, but it's worth it. You're making a good chunk of change, and if you've ever thought about, you'd like it. You'd enjoy it, because I know you and I know how you are, and um, it makes you focus. And as we get older, there's not a lot of things that where it's a challenge, where you got to step up, right? So
Sure.
10, 15, 20 times a year, I need to step up my game for something. So
Yeah.
it's
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Super cool. I'm sure you've watched the shows before. Now's that time of the evening where I kind of do my funny bit of pick your poison. I just asked like 3 questions, kind of that has gone throughout the entire part of it all. And kind of just being funny. Like I said, it's nothing too hard to answer, but it's really just seeing in an either or situation. All right, my first one for you is soldier or civilian?
Ooh, soldier, definitely.
Why? Why you pick soldier?
You have more fun, right? Like civilian's kind of boring. I've been both. You can get away with a little bit more. Especially when you're younger, you could be a little bit more wild. It's you got a uniform that never hurts with things. If I had to choose, it definitely a soldier, definitely without question. Like easy, you can drink just everything in general, right? Like you see a soldier halfway drunk, you're like, oh, look at that soldier, right? You see a civilian halfway toasted, and you're like, look at that asshole, right? Like so, definitely a soldier.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I mean, I get it, definitely. My next one would be the sport, being in the sport, being the wrestler or being the official.
Being the official, definitely being less work, right? less pain on the body. And definitely I've done both. I've never lost a wrestling match I've never got beat up as an official. So, and I've been beat up a lot of times as a wrestler. So, official. Yeah, more fun. Yeah, it's more fun as an official. So
that's cool. That's cool. And then my last question for you, kind of a heart bender, but I know you go one side or the other. That's going to be Browns versus Steelers. Who you got?
Oh, Cleveland Browns, baby, without question. So, growing, my disdain for Steelers fans is high, right? So, because when I moved here, I'd wear a Browns T-shirt out in town, and everywhere you'd go, like they would just treat you like, and I'm like, and ever since then, like I don't even want to let the Steelers on in my house. My kids, they don't have Steelers jerseys, and I'm not even a huge Browns fan, but it's one of those things. It's like, no, nope. I got my Cleveland Indians beer mug. Still, I got my Cleveland Indians blanket. And my Christmas tree. I still got a Kellen Winslow, Charlie Fry Christmas ornament. I still hang up on my Christmas tree. So definitely Cleveland. Definitely.
No, man, that's cool. That's cool. Just wanted to appreciate you, dude. Thank you for coming on tonight. I know you're a busy man. Jose Torres did want to pop in one last time. He was like, good stuff, Jason. This Tony Gonzalez. Jose, appreciate you guys all tuning in.
Yeah, definitely.
Was super happy to have Jason on. We'll be watching the career, man. Keeping an eye on you, dude, when you go out to, when you're on ESPN. I can catch some Big 12 matches too, man. Hopefully I get to see you on there, buddy. So
I'll let you know.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate you, man. And you know what's up. You ever make your way out here to Florida, you let me know, big fella. You know what's up.
Definitely. We'll keep in touch, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. I appreciate you. I'm gonna drop you backstage and kind of do my wrap up of the show. All right, bud?
All right, thanks.
All right. Take care, Jay. Yeah, so that was Jason Rivera. Super excited to have him on. Really appreciate the fact that he was able to come on. Like I said, he's a pretty busy guy, but they just came to a conclusion of the wrestling season. Just had the NCAA championships recently. And it was a great, to have him on, talk to him about his life and how it's led up to him and what he's doing now. And he's proud of the fact that he's he's worked his tail off to get to the Big 12 and make something out of it. It's not easy to get into that industry. He talked a little bit about, how it is with parents and coaches and, everybody chomping at the bit to get at you if you make a bad call. And, so you gotta work hard and try not to make those bad calls that can decide a match sometimes, and that happens. So, like I said, appreciate the guy. Awesome dude. Super happy that I was able to have him on tonight for you guys. Yeah. So, I appreciate you, Jason. Now I'm going to make an announcement about the games coming May 8th at the Sarah Vandenberg Tennis and Wellness Center. It's a pretty cool event going on out there. It's hosted by lockituptennis.com. It's going to be in Zephyr Hills, like I said. So check them out. I do have a brief video that I'm going to pop on right now and kind of show you guys about what it is that they're trying to do. And, just put it on display of what exactly the games is.
So at lockituptennis.com and the games, this is what we're doing. Slinger bag machine over there spits out 75 tennis balls. That's the number we're using. We're going to shoot them out at a 45-degree angle into the air. The objective is to catch those tennis balls without a bounce, place them get back in position to catch the next one. Timing, footwork, accuracy, endurance, all those things are going to come into play. Top score, 3 top scorers compete at the end of this competition for the grand prize. Once that's done, that's what it is. Lock it up tennis.
So yeah, like I said, go check them out. May 8th, Zephyr Hills, Florida. It's $20 entry fee. It's $250 grand prize. So yeah, get a chance, go do that. Go check him out. It's super cool time. And super excited to see what they got going on out there. I kind of look like I'm frozen on the screen. I don't know if I am for y'all or not. I don't know how it's going. It looks like the screen's locked up, Jay. I don't know. Just want to give you guys a final shout out. Appreciate you all for your time. But yeah, I won't do a final quote of the night. I'll be back in 2 weeks. You guys check it out. Okay, I'm back now. Sorry about that. Yeah, so what I usually do at this time is do a final quote of the night. I do have a final quote. I'm going to go ahead and read that to you guys now. It's got something to do with officiating. It said, officiating is trying to do your absolute best with what you've got. And that's a quote by Doug Harvey. Super excited to have Jason on tonight. It's a special show. I think, like I said before, officiating doesn't get the proper respect sometimes that it deserves because those guys are out there just trying to make the game as best as possible in every sport that they're doing. So, have some respect, appreciate them for what they're doing because they're really not going out there to be biased towards any particular team. But yeah, with that being said, the business, let's be real, episode 20, over.